All right, fellow fact checkers. Now, before we start the show, I want to remind you to head over and check out our great sponsor, Fox and Son Coffee. They've got an amazing deal with all kinds of blends going on. So head over there and check it out. You can get the Mexican honey prep, the Brazilian honey prep, the Guatemalan, the Ethiopian. They'll be adding new roasts regularly. So be sure to check in and see what new flavors Steve has got over at Fox and Sons Coffee. They've also got all of your usual favorites, the Den Blend Dark, the Den Blend Light, and the one that we personally like around the house since we can't seem to agree on which of the light or the dark is better for both me and the wife, the Den Blend 2 Electric Boogaloo, which is the medium roast. So be sure to use the checkout code FCT for Fact Check This at checkout, and that'll get you an 18% discount on any order of $25 or more. Also, any order of $37.99 or more get you free shipping. Load up on all the greatest coffee on the market, and you can thank me later. Well, let's start the show.
This episode will be completely taken out of context. Welcome to the Fact Check This podcast.
Fact Check This podcast, and today we're going to cover a few different articles similar to what we did last week. These are all also insane rage bait stuff from left-wing media outlets taking horrible takes on stuff and being crying leftists, basically. I'm not sure which one to start with, really. Today, we're going to focus specifically on Ukraine and NATO. Let's start with the NATO one. Actually, we'll start the other way around. We'll start with Ukraine and work our way to NATO. I don't know. Either way, it all comes out to the same thing. Ukraine is toast, and NATO is done for. More or less is kind of the way it looks. So yeah, let's start with Zelensky crying, and I mean he knows the end is near. The gravy train is about to run out, and I mean he doesn't really have a lot of options. It's impressive that he's been able to keep it up for this long, and mostly the only reason that Ukraine has been able to keep it up for this long is because, as it turns out, Russia doesn't actually want to take over Ukraine and the rest of Europe. They literally came to do a particular thing. They did that thing, and then they sat pat after they did that thing. Most of what's happened since then is because Ukraine continues to retaliate and keep a war going, and the U.S. and Europe are encouraging it because why wouldn't they? Ukraine is their cash cow. That's their money laundering program, and they have every incentive to keep a war going. So, yeah, let's take a look at The Guardian in their all of their journalistic integrity. Kiev's White House wooing implodes as Zelensky tells the truth about Trump. Oh my God, it tells the truth about Trump. let's see what the truth entails here. Truth coming from any left-wing media source is pretty fucking hilarious, but here we go. All America's allies know that Trump is trapped in a disinformation bubble, but Zelensky said it out loud. Sure, that's what it is. All the effort Kiev had expended in wooing the White House, combining flattery with bribery and a share of Ukraine's mineral wealth, imploded in minutes when Vladimir Zelensky broke the fundamental rule of the new global reality. He told the truth about Donald Trump. All America's allies, the great majority of Republican leaders who have bowed to him, and a good number of his own cabinet, know full well that Trump is trapped in a disinformation bubble. But Zelensky said it out loud at a press conference on Wednesday. In this new world where the foreign policy of the most powerful country on earth has been rapidly reorganized around the fragile ego of a sullen and resentful old man, you might as well launch missiles at America's eastern seaboard as utter a few words of rebuke. This shit is impressive writing. Zelensky was unaware of this. On Tuesday, he had complained that his country was being excluded from talks about its fate between the U.S. and Russia in Riyadh. They were about Ukraine, but without Ukraine, he said. It was a fair point. What happened in Riyadh was an upending of Western policy towards Ukraine. But none of that matters anymore. This is year zero as far as Trump, Elon Musk, and their supporters are concerned. Yes, correct. The Ukrainian president's gripe triggered a meltdown in Mar-a-Lago where Trump told stunned reporters that Ukraine had started the war and that Zelensky had a 4% approval rating. It is hardly surprising Zelensky lost his cool. Part of the reason he has a 57% confidence rate in the latest poll, 13% above Trump's own current standing. And we just talked about this last week. Trump's approval is in the upper 50s. So, and also, do we really trust the polling that's being released from the guy who has suspended elections indefinitely? Yes, indefinitely. Ukraine was supposed to have elections in 2022 and 2024, and they have not had any elections since all of this started. Amazing how, like, the guy who's supposedly going to become the king of the United States and that will never have any elections ever again. He's not done any of that and probably has no intentions of doing that, while the guy who literally did suspend all elections and hasn't had to face re-election or any challenge of any sort at all whatsoever for he went in 18, so it's been 8 years now. 6 years now, 7 years now. Yeah, math. And anyway, 6+ years. Yeah, that's amazing, right? Anyway. Having been subjected to 8 years of Russian aggression. Oh my God. We've talked about this too. Russian aggression. That's fucking impressive. Like that. Talk about a disinformation bubble. Not understanding what started in 2014, what started in 2008, but really started in 2014 with Ukraine and everything that Biden and the Democrats had done over there for a decade, for everything that they did that led up to this point. I mean, you want to talk about a disinformation bubble. Holy fucking shit. And I'm not going through all that again because I've gone through it ad nauseum at least twice on this show, if not more than that. So, like, find the episodes. It's all there. We've been through this a number of times. Having been subjected to 8 years of Russian aggression, followed by an entirely unprovoked, full-on invasion. Yes, it was entirely unprovoked. And a full-on invasion. Okay, maybe. Which has killed tens of thousands of Ukrainian citizens. And then to be told on the world stage that you should have never started it would be too much for most people. And to be fair, Zelensky didn't start it. The United States, specifically Trump's predecessors, both times, they're the ones who started it. But that's neither here nor there. When slighted and sprayed with Trumpian falsehoods, other world leaders, with much less at stake, have resorted to a smile and wave default strategy, deflecting direct questions and changing the subject to some aspect of relations with Washington that is still functioning normally. Zelensky did not do this on Wednesday. Instead, he said out loud the bit that European leaders keep quiet. Trump, he observed, is trapped in this disinformation bubble. He was stating the obvious, but not even Zelensky could have known how fetid the air inside Trump's bubble has become. And now we know. Except that Trump's tirade on his own app, Truth Social, in a distillation of the greatest hits of Russian disinformation of the past 3 years. He said Zelensky was a dictator without elections, something Trump has never said about Putin. Well, whether or not you believe they are fair and done democratically, Russia does hold elections. I mean, dictator without elections. Zelensky has not held an election since I think 2018 was legitimately the last one that they actually, the last real election they had. I don't think they did any elections in 2020 because of COVID. So Zelensky has effectively suspended all elections for the last 6 years. But yeah, Trump and Putin are the bad guys where elections are concerned. Who had hoodwinked the Biden administration into $350 billion into a $350 billion war of choice. I don't know about hoodwinked. They were pretty well ready to do this anyway, which only Trump could fix. Well, the war has been going on for 3 years now. And in a month and a half, Trump looks to have it fixed. I mean, really? The president's repeated references to himself in the third person in all caps erased any lingering doubts about the single unifying compulsion now driving Trump's foreign policy. The child who guidelessly points out the emperor has no clothes is the hero of the folktale, but the emperor in Hans Christian Andersen's story did not have a vast nuclear arsenal and the world's mightiest army. Hasn't Trump been actively in negotiations with Russia and Ukraine, or not Ukraine, with Russia and China to start scaling down the nuclear arms that every country holds? Pretty sure that's one of the things that he's been doing since he got in office. But yeah, I mean, make a big deal about the nuclear arsenal as well. And the world's mightiest army. Well, it was the world's mightiest army before all the DEI bullshit. But hey, we're getting back to that. And with that, we'll get to some Pete Hex's stuff on the next article. Telling the truth is cathartic, but getting into a personal spat with Trump amid the dizzying euphoria of his restoration to the Oval Office risks serious damage to your country. And that begs the question, what will work with Trump now? He admires autocrats and is eager to please them, but that is not really an option for the world's remaining democracies. The hope in Western European capitals, based on patchy evidence from the first Trump term, is that if they can make discrete common cause with the calmer heads around Trump, he can be gently steered away from his more extreme whims. But luckily for all of us, he doesn't have the calmer heads around him this time. We're ready to wage some fucking war on the whole bullshit establishment, obviously. In that regard, they have some faith in Marco Rubio and Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff. They may be able to talk the president out of his stated plan to own and ethnically cleanse Gaza, if only because it would be so disastrous for the U.S. But from the evidence of Trump's rants, the poison about Ukraine has seeped deeper into the president's nervous system. Zelensky's best option might be to persevere with the offer of an American share in Ukraine's rare earths. Trump's first offer was to take half the spoils with no security guarantees in return, but the absurd opening offer is likely to be just part of his art of the deal brinkmanship. Further negotiations may distract him, like a dog with a bone, from his profound pro-Putin impulses. It's a long shot. It is also an act of faith to believe this Trump episode in American history will eventually pass. But we are not even 1 month into his chaotic second term, And for a country like Ukraine facing an existential threat, it is going to be a very long 4 years. It's probably not going to be a very long 4 years. It's going to be a pretty short couple of months because they're going to get a deal done. And what's going to end up happening is Ukraine is going to give up Donbass and Crimea and the things that Russia wanted to begin with. And not only that, but the places that wanted to go back to being a part of Russia to begin with. But the U.S. wouldn't allow that. And everybody's going to move on, which is what should have happened a long time ago. This should have been an easy fix. And Ukraine has even had the opportunity to come to the table for peace talks, to get a deal done, to put an end to this at least 3 separate occasions over the course of this war. And the U.S. would not let them do it. The Biden administration and Biden's military chiefs would not allow Ukraine to have peace talks with Russia. How fucked up is that? But yeah, this is like, all of this is just Trump is evil, right? Speaking of our once strong military and now currently pretty shitty military, but under new leadership, very possibly will soon be returning to its former glory. Oh, Pete Hegseth is doing a European tour as well. And according to MSNBC, so you notice I'm hitting all the good ones today. No CNN today though. Pete Hegseth's tenure at the Pentagon goes from bad to worse. And what happened, you might ask? Oh, I don't know. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's overseas trip started with heckling from military families that turned out to be one of the best moments of his excursion. It's amazing that these progressive, woke, hang their entire life on being as liberal as possible. As soon as there's a little bit of a challenge to that, they resort to crying and heckling. It's way to be the bigger people in all of this. As last week got underway, it was clear that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's tenure at the Pentagon was off to an unfortunate start. When the former Fox News host arrived at the U.S. European Command headquarters in Germany, for example, he faced heckling and protests from military families. Protests by military families against the defense secretary are extremely rare, NBC News reported. As it turns out, this was among the best moments for Hegseth during his trip abroad. They're protesting because they know they are fucking useless and are about to lose their jobs. The same as all these protests about Elon Musk and Doge. They know that they're fucking useless and about to lose their jobs. This is what we voted for. All right. Once again, this is exactly what we voted for. This is what we wanted. And I could not be happier about it. The day after facing military families' derision, the hapless Pentagon chief publicly said it was unrealistic to think Russia wouldn't keep portions of Ukraine it took by force. That is a 100% accurate statement. He added that Ukrainian membership in NATO wouldn't happen. Also a 100% accurate statement. It was a dramatic misstep. Before negotiations on a possible peace plan even began, Hegseth was already giving Russia what it wanted. No, he was being realistic and making sure everybody understood if you're going to end the war, these are things that have to happen. The mistake did not go unnoticed. What mistake? Not only were U.S. allies taken aback, but Senator Roger Wicker of Mississippi, the Republican chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, chided the defense secretary for making a rookie mistake. He didn't make a rookie mistake. He told exactly what is going to happen. The chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, I would be willing to bet big money that he is making big money off of this war. Hegseth tried to backpedal a day later, distancing himself from something that was stated as part of my remarks, a passive voice phrase for the ages. But around the same time, the Pentagon chief launched into some terribly odd comments about the use of force. We can talk all we want about values. Values are important, Hegseth said in widely derided comments. But you can't shoot values, you can't shoot flags, and you can't shoot strong speeches. See, here's where he fucked up. Never, ever, 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 fucking ever apologize to these miserable cocksuckers. Don't backpedal. Don't try to clarify or justify. Say, I said it, fuck you. That's it. Then once you start backpedaling and trying to like justify your answer or whatever, or, you know, distance yourself from it, you've already fucked up. Own it, double down on it, tell them to get fucked. The unscripted comments appeared to reflect someone who was simply in over his head. Making matters worse, as my MSNBC colleague John Jones noted, Hegseth apparently thought it'd also be a good idea to bring right-wing influencer and conspiracy theorist Jack Posobiec with him on his overseas trip. Politico reported soon after that the activist was in the room when Hegseth greeted Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky ahead of their private meeting. All right, so Poso is a military guy, and he and Hegseth are friends, and also the left absolutely hates Poso because he and his brother did like an in-depth look at Antifa and like basically went behind enemy lines and like integrated themselves into Antifa so that they could report on how terrible, horrible those fucking miserable cunts are. And they, like, after they did that, the left absolutely hates him. Like, that's how they, you know, figured out who he really was. And that was it. So naturally, MSNBC is going to say everything bad that they possibly can about him. The report added, Posobiec, whose record of far-right activism includes promoting conspiracy theories and associating with white nationalists, has long been a controversial figure and would have been considered fringe during their prior administrations. But now he's in position to bear witness to key moments on one of the world's most consequential issues. As the dust settled on the secretary's trip, the New York Times reported, in all, it was a bruising 72-hour crash course in the geopolitical realities of a job that critics complained Hegseth, a 44-year-old former National Guard infantryman and Fox News host, is unqualified to hold. It's important, of course, to hold Hegseth accountable for his own failures. Let's not forget that Trump bears responsibility for nominating the former television personality. J.D. Vance bears responsibility for ensuring the secretary's confirmation, and 50 Senate Republicans bear responsibility for overlooking Hegseth's scandals, inexperience, and bizarre ideology. All of the scandals that have been completely debunked. Yes, okay. That's why you ignore those. And he didn't get the job for experience. He got the job for what he brings to the table and what his plan is going forward. And all of this, and as I would want from a good Secretary of Defense, he's probably not going to be real good at the political bullshittery, which is exactly what all of this like European tour is. It's all political bullshittery. You want a guy in charge of the military who's going to be a military guy and who's going to push for a strong military. Not somebody who engages in political bullshittery. All right, and the last one, since all of this European tour is going on, what's going to be the culmination of it? Well, let's take a look. I think that's over. Retired general declares death of key U.S. alliance. And if you haven't figured it out yet, that alliance is NATO. But is NATO really a alliance so much as just something that the U.S. is, dumping money into in order to serve as the world police, similar to the UN? Yeah, that's, call them like I see them. Let's see. Retired General Barry McCaffrey said he thinks that after 76 years, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, known as NATO, is over. Speaking on an MSNBC panel on foreign policy experts about President Donald Trump blaming Ukraine for Russia invading their border, McCaffrey lamented that he fears war is coming. War is coming? Dude, war is about to end. How do you misread this? Unfortunately, my own view is the damage is done, he said, of Trump's failures in foreign policy. It's now irrevocable. There's not a shred of rational argument among European powers to trust the United States' commitment to NATO and Article 5. Okay, so if they don't trust the United States, then NATO's dead. Because if the United States pulls out of NATO, there's nobody else putting anything into it. We are the power behind that. Cool. Again, this is what we voted for. We voted for the U.S. to pull out of the WHO and to pull out of NATO and to tell the UN to go fuck themselves. These are the things we wanted. Yes. Also, former General McCaffrey, he was one of the kings of the political bullshittery for the military. That's what a lot of these big time generals do, is they're not actually what you would consider legitimate soldiers. They're mostly politicians who wear a uniform and served. Anyway, he remarked that NATO has served as a deterrent organization and kept the peace for 4 generations. What has NATO deterred? And what peace has NATO kept? If anything, NATO is largely responsible for the current war that's going on with Russia, because they have been actively pushing out their borders closer and closer to Russia. So how have they been keeping the peace when they've been antagonizing the thing that they all consider to be the biggest global threat there is? I think that's over, he confessed. So I think right now there's a scramble among all the European countries to include the Finns and the Swedes and others who are borderline states, the Baltic states, Poland, that they think they're under the gun. He also said that he wouldn't be surprised if, in public, they haven't basically committed themselves to wiping out any U.S. assurances. While the U.S. has nuclear capabilities, he said, unfortunately, both the French and Brits do as well. Otherwise, the nuclear assurance that the U.S. grants to our allies in Europe would be gone also, he continued. Another thing he mentioned is that he noticed Trump's determination to invade and take Greenland doesn't make any sense, given U.S. forces are already there as part of a NATO base. Without NATO, however, U.S. troops wouldn't be there. God, this guy might be a fucking retard. Trump has not talked about invading Greenland. These are the people that MSNBC and Raw Story run as their sources for how terrible Trump is and how bad all of this is. It's fucking laughable. There's a series of sort of psychobabble announcements coming out of the U.S. government that has the global leadership confused. But they think we're gone. I think in Europe for the Trump administration, period. MSNBC host Nicole Wallace asked what that means for the world. Well, I think it increases the likelihood of war, he said. All of these warmongering fucks that have kept us embroiled in some global scale of war for the last 40 fucking years can't see any outcome to anything other than more war. Because that's what they need. They crave it. They live for it. They live off of it. And they all deserve to rot in hell. That's today's edition of all the crazy shit that the left is talking about. You can determine how much of that you think is serious or believable or even has a shred of truth. I've talked about a lot of this stuff at length previously. If you listen to this show for more than 2 or 3 years, you know all the backstory on a lot of this stuff. Like, these are the spin articles that they're running to try to, I don't know, I guess to justify their own position to their own, like, insane base, because nobody who voted for Trump believes anything these retards are saying anymore. Like, they are just putting out rage bait to get their own audience worked up and to keep them mad about stuff, so they'll keep coming back for more. Because if they ever sat down and started to, like, you know, think critically or learn the truth about anything that goes on in the world, then Raw Story, MSNBC, and The Guardian would all lose their entire audience base. And then what would they do? I mean, we've already seen what they would do. MSNBC fired Joy Reid. It's fucking amazing. CNN fired Jim Acosta. They're going through massive layoffs. It's incredible. Like, this is what happens when people stop listening to you because you keep spouting the same ridiculous, unbelievable nonsense and reporting opinions over facts. And that's why all of you come here. It's just the facts, ma'am or sir. That'll do it for today's episode. We did an article by Paul Fahrenheit a while ago, probably 6 or 8 months ago, and there was a follow-up to that we had discussed doing an episode and talking about, and then it kind of fell through the cracks. Conversations about bringing that second article from Paul Fahrenheit up and doing a full conversation on that are back in the works. It might be a couple weeks because I'm hitting my midweek schedule with work, or my midweek rotation with my work schedule, and makes it hard for me to have a lot of availability during the week to do a live stream like that. But that will be coming up sometime relatively soon, I'm pretty sure. So stay tuned. I will make an announcement as soon as I get a schedule or a date scheduled for that. Then I'll make an announcement and let everybody know. In the meantime, be sure to check out the daily stuff, and I will see you next week. Later.
Before you go, make sure you check out our great sponsor, Agorist Acres. Now, agoristacres.com, you can find over 100 varieties of seeds. They've got vegetables, flowers, all kinds of stuff. They've got heritage brands, everything that you want to start any kind of garden that you need. It's free shipping on any order of $20 or more. They've got cool packaging, and most of the seeds come in a fancy glass vial, no paper envelopes. They accept US dollars and crypto and can easily take either at checkout. Now be sure to head over to agoristacres.com, and anything that you get, use the promo code FCT at checkout for 10% off your order. I say all the time that you need to be starting your own garden, you need to be growing your own food, you need to be getting off the grid and becoming less dependent on grocery stores and stuff like that. Agorist Acres is a great first start. They have got everything you need for whatever kind of garden you want. Great people, great product, highly recommend. So go check them out.